Welcome to RANEPA Expert Talks, and I'm happy to present you David Engerman, Professor of History of Yale University. Good morning.
Good morning.
David, the first question is, economic development has always been your interest, which is reflected in your books. Why? What do you find exciting and important that you want to share with your readers?
So I think economic development is one of the fundamental problems of the 20th century, especially the late 20th century, all over the world. It deals with one of the biggest crises, a crisis of global poverty, and efforts to solve it, mostly led by states. And I think one of the things that's always interested me about development is it shows both the possibilities of state intervention, but also the perils and the dangers of the wrong kinds of state intervention. And that applies both within individual countries and in a global sphere as major powers, first the United States and the Soviet Union, later Western and Eastern Europe, all engaged in large programs of economic development. It worked at a global level as well as a national level to show both the high hopes and the successes as well as the failures and dangers of trying to change societies and economies.
I see. Well, you wrote about Cold War and the Soviet Union about 10 years ago. What is appealing to you in the Soviet and post-Soviet history?
Well, I got interested in Soviet history because my undergraduate and education and my high school education took place during the Reagan years, Reagan/Gorbachev/ et cetera years. And I found it just absolutely compelling history, that Soviet history challenges the historian to understand everything, all of the things historians need to think about survival, about high aspirations, about promises made and especially promises broken, about how to live in different kinds of societies and different kinds of politics. So I've always found Soviet history just truly, truly compelling and try to share that in my writings and in my teaching.
Mm-hmm. Well, you reported the forum is called "Do Politicians Need History Advisors?" My answer would be yes. What are the main messages of your speech?
Well, I appreciate the vote of support. Historians, especially in the United States, could use all the help we can get. I think it's actually less important that we have historical advisors for politicians and more important that we have history teachers for politicians. I think the number one thing that historians can teach politicians is a historical mindset and a historical worldview, to look at long trajectories, understanding something before it hit the newspapers, before the crisis hit. History is a great way to teach empathy, which is not trying to justify other countries and other policies, but merely to understand how they might have come about. And the last thing I think historians, history as a profession is very good at teaching humility.
Mm-hmm. Well, you work both in American and Russian archives. What other means do you use in your work? I mean, face-to-face interviews, surveys, social media probably?
I'm afraid I'm quite behind in terms of social media. My teenage daughter is well ahead of me in that category. I avoid it for the most part. I did a number of interviews, especially for the book on Soviet studies, where I interviewed over 100 scholars, Western scholars, who wrote about the Soviet Union. And I especially like to do face-to-face interviews, in part for the reasons I suggested earlier, that they help us understand, to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else who was trying to reckon with decisions based on imperfect information. And it's very easy as a historian to come in and criticize, but this helps us actually understand how they saw things. So I would say that the face-to-face interviews I've done in Russia and India and in the United States have really been highlights of my research.
I see. And the next question, what's next in your research pipeline?
Well, I'm returning to the question of economic development, but looking at it more in the realm of ideas than in the realm of policy. So I'm looking at a number of economists from, as we say in the States now, the global South, from the Third World, who all played crucial roles in both understanding the causes of poverty and trying to address them, each in their own different ways. So I'm very interested in the relationship in this between theory and practice, how it is that theories emerge, theories of economic development emerge, and also how those are applied in both national and the international levels.
Thank you very much for the interview. Thank you very much for coming for Gaidar Forum. I know you have a busy week because you are teaching, and so you made all this way. So have a very fruitful discussion, and see you later.
I hope so. Thank you very much. Bye.